I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. My daughter-in-law sent me a text that changed everything. Mom, don't forget to eat the leftovers in the fridge. I was standing in my own son's kitchen, preparing a celebration dinner he'd never invited me to. At 68 years old, I just discovered I was nothing more than the family's free housekeeper. But what they didn't know was that I owned half of everything they were trying to steal from me. Let me start from the beginning. The late afternoon sun streamed through the kitchen window as I sliced cucumbers with practiced precision. Thump, thump, thump. The rhythmic sound of the knife hitting the cutting board was the only noise in the quiet house. It was Friday, almost 6:30, and I was making Julian's favorite meatloaf, the same recipe I'd been making since he was 5 years old. 3 years. That's how long I'd been living here in my son's house ever since my husband Arthur passed away. Julian had come to pick me up from our old home with tears in his eyes. Mom, we can't let you live alone. Come stay with us. Leo needs you. Leo, my 3-year-old grandson, the sweetest little boy with his father's dimples and his grandfather's eyes. That promise of being needed, of having purpose, had made the decision easy. Clara, my daughter-in-law, was going back to work after maternity leave. They needed help with the baby. What I didn't realize then was that help meant becoming invisible. Grandma, Grandma! Leo's voice rang out as tiny feet pattered across the hardwood floor. He burst into the kitchen, his round face beaming, a crumpled piece of paper clutched in his chubby fist. Whoa there, sweetheart. I quickly put down the knife and wiped my hands on my apron. What do you have there? I drawed a dinosaur. He thrust the paper toward me, his eyes shining with pride. I bent down to his level, my knees protesting slightly. The drawing was a riot of crooked lines in every color imaginable. Is that so? Let Grandma guess which kind. I pretended to study it carefully. Is it a T-Rex? No. He giggled, bouncing on his toes. It's a triceratops. A triceratops. Of course I should have known. You drew it perfectly. I kissed his forehead, breathing in that sweet little boy smell of crayons and apple juice. Should we show Daddy when he gets home? When is Daddy coming home? His face fell slightly. I glanced at the clock. 6:25. Any minute now, sweetie. He's just... The sound of the front door unlocking cut me off. Leo shot away from me like a rocket, screaming "Daddy, Daddy" at the top of his lungs. I followed him to the entryway, drying my hands on a dish towel. Julian stood there in his sharp navy suit tie, loosened briefcase in one hand. His face was lined with exhaustion, but it lit up when Leo crashed into his legs. He scooped his son onto his shoulders in one practiced motion. There's my big guy. Were you good for Grandma today? Mom. Julian nodded at me over Leo's head. His smile was distracted, already fading. Guess what? I got some great news at the office today. My heart lifted. What kind of news? I got the promotion. Department manager. His eyes sparkled with an excitement I hadn't seen in months. It's official. Julian, that's wonderful. I clasped my hands together, genuine pride warming my chest. I knew you could do it. All that hard work finally paid off. Let me add a few more dishes to dinner. We should celebrate properly. I started to turn back toward the kitchen, already mentally reviewing what I had in the refrigerator. Maybe I could make that pasta dish he liked, and there were strawberries for dessert. Actually, Mom, no need. Julian's voice stopped me cold. I already booked a private room at the Oak Room. I'm treating my whole department to dinner tonight. Clara's meeting me there straight from the mall. I turned back slowly, my smile frozen in place. Oh, that's very nice. You young people go celebrate. I'll just stay here with Leo. We're taking Leo, too. Julian bounced his son on his shoulders, making the boy shriek with laughter. My in-laws are already waiting at the restaurant. Something cold settled in the pit of my stomach. Your in-laws... The words came out before I could stop them sharper than I intended. Julian didn't seem to notice. Yeah, Clara's parents. This is a family celebration, you know. The whole family needs to be there. He draped his suit jacket over the back of the sofa, already moving toward the bedroom. Mom, don't trouble yourself with cooking. There are leftovers in the fridge. Just heat something up. I stood there, the dish towel still clutched in my hands as Julian disappeared down the hall. The whole family. His in-laws were family, but apparently I wasn't. 20 minutes later, Julian emerged from the bedroom in fresh clothes, smelling of cologne. He scooped up Leo, grabbed the diaper bag I'd packed that morning, and headed for the door. We might be late, Mom. Don't wait up. The door clicked shut behind them. The house fell silent except for the gentle gurgle of the soup I'd left simmering on the stove. I walked back to the kitchen on legs that felt oddly numb. The cutting board still held the sliced cucumbers. The tomatoes sat waiting to be added to the salad. The meatloaf was in the oven, filling the house with its rich, savory aroma, a smell that suddenly made me feel sick. My phone buzzed. A text from Clara. "Mom, remember to eat the leftovers in the fridge. Don't let them go to waste." My finger hovered over the reply button, but before I could type anything, another message came through. This time it was a photo. The image loaded slowly, and each pixel that appeared felt like a small knife to my heart. It was taken in a luxurious private dining room, all dark wood paneling and crystal chandeliers. Julian stood in the center, raising a champagne glass, his face flushed with happiness. Clara sat to his right, radiant in a dress I'd never seen before. Her parents flanked them on either side, her father's arm around Julian's shoulders. Leo perched on his maternal grandfather's lap, chocolate smeared on his face, but grinning broadly. But that wasn't all. In the corner of the photo, I could see Julian's younger sister Amanda and her husband Mark. Even they had been invited. The whole family, Julian had said. Everyone except me. I lowered myself into a chair at the kitchen table, my legs suddenly unable to hold me up. The phone screen blurred as tears filled my eyes, but I blinked them back furiously. I wouldn't cry. Not yet. With shaking fingers, I typed a single word, "Okay." Then I set the phone face down on the table. The plastic case made a sharp clicking sound against the glass surface, far too loud in the silent house. The microwave beeped. The leftovers, yesterday's meatloaf and a container of rice, were heated and ready. I stared at the Tupperware container condensation beating on its plastic lid, and suddenly I couldn't bear the thought of eating. I wasn't hungry anymore. The clock on the living room wall read 7:30. Outside darkness had fallen completely, and the neighborhood was quiet. I'd turned off the soup, wrapped the uneaten food, and now I sat on the couch with the television playing some home improvement show I wasn't really watching. My phone sat on the coffee table screen dark. I turned it face up again, some pathetic part of me hoping for another message. An invitation to join them even late. An apology. Anything. Nothing came. Instead, I found myself reaching for the photo albums on the bookshelf. Dust had settled on them. When was the last time anyone had looked at these? I pulled down the most recent one and settled back on the couch. The first photo was from 3 years ago, taken at one of those portrait studios in the mall. Our first New Year's after Arthur died. Julian stood in the center in a crisp button-down shirt. I was on his left, wearing the blue blouse he'd given me for Christmas. Clara stood on his right, her hand resting on Julian's arm. And little Leo, barely 6 months old, sat on a small cushion in front of us, supported by all our hands. Back then, I was still part of the family photo. I turned the page. Here was Leo's first birthday party. Me holding him as he smashed his face into a blue frosted cake. Julian and Clara on either side laughing. The next page showed Leo's first steps captured in my arms, my face alight with joy as he toddled toward me. Page after page of memories. Me reading to Leo. Me at his second birthday. Me in the background of a Halloween photo helping him into his dinosaur costume while Clara posed with him in the foreground. Always there. Always helping. But when had I stopped being in the center of the photos? I closed that album and reached for an older one from Julian's childhood. The leather cover was worn soft from years of handling. Arthur and I had looked at this album so many times, usually late at night, marveling at how our little boy had grown. Julian at 1 month old, tiny and red-faced, wrapped in the blue blanket I'd knitted. His first day of kindergarten clutching my skirt and refusing to let go. His elementary school graduation wearing an oversized red ribbon reciting a poem he'd memorized. Middle school winning first place in the math competition, his shy smile as he held up the trophy. The day his college acceptance letter arrived, we'd set off firecrackers in the yard to celebrate. Every milestone, every achievement. I was there. I was always there. Arthur and I had scrimped and saved to buy that house in the good school district. I'd gone without new clothes for 3 years to pay for Julian's SAT tutoring. The year he took the college entrance exams, I woke up at 4 in the morning every single day to make him soup, to make sure he stayed healthy and focused. I'd given everything I had to raise this boy into a good man. And tonight, on one of the most important days of his career, he'd celebrated with everyone except the woman who'd sacrificed the most for him. The ringing of my phone made me jump. The screen lit up with a name, Carol Martinez. Carol was one of my few remaining friends from the old neighborhood. We'd lived across the street from each other for 20 years before Arthur died. She still called every few weeks to check in. I almost didn't answer. My voice would give away that I'd been crying and I didn't want to explain. But loneliness won out. "Hello? Eleanor, have you eaten yet?" Carol's cheerful voice boomed through the speaker. Yes, just finished." The lie came easily. "How about you?" "Just cleaned up the dishes. I was bored, so I thought I'd give you a ring." There was a pause, and when Carol spoke again, her voice held a different note. "Oh, by the way, I heard your Julian got promoted. I ran into Clara at the grocery store this morning. She was so excited going on and on about it." My fingers tightened around the phone. "Yes, it's wonderful news. She said they're finally going to be able to get that bigger house now. You know, the ones over on the east side? Those townhouses near Willow Creek, beautiful area." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "I'm sorry, what?" "The townhouses Clara showed me pictures on her phone. Said with Julian's new salary and, oh, what did she say? Something about some money coming through soon. Anyway, she was really excited about it. 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. Really nice." I couldn't speak. My throat had closed completely. "Eleanor, you still there?" "Yes, I'm here." I forced the words out. I didn't realize they were that far along in the process. "Oh," Carol's voice dropped suddenly cautious. "I figured you'd know all about it. I mean, you're living there and all. Maybe I got it wrong." "No, I'm sure you're right. My memory isn't what it used to be." Another lie. My memory was perfect. Julian hadn't mentioned a word about moving. "Well, it'll be nice for all of you to have more space," Carol said clearly, trying to smooth over the awkwardness. "Oh, that reminds me the reason I really called. There's something going on with the old neighborhood." "What do you mean?" "Demolition notices went up last week. Your building is included in the redevelopment zone. Haven't you seen the notices? They're all over the community board." The room wasn't just tilting anymore. It was spinning. Demolition since when? "Just the last couple weeks. The compensation plan looks pretty good from what people are saying. The community office is registering homeowners now." Carol paused. "Julian didn't tell you he was there last week. I saw him talking to Sarah at the community office. He had a whole stack of papers with him." My free hand gripped the arm of the couch so tightly my knuckles turned white. He might have mentioned it. Like I said, my memory. "Well, you should get down there and check it out yourself. The deadline for registration is coming up soon. You don't want to miss out on that compensation money." We talked for a few more minutes, but I couldn't focus on anything Carol was saying. My mind was racing, trying to piece together what I'd just learned. Julian had been to the community office a week ago, looking into demolition compensation, planning to buy a townhouse. And he hadn't said a single word to me. After I hung up with Carol, I sat in the silence of the living room, my mind working through the implications. The old house Arthur's and my house was in both our names when he died. That meant it legally belonged to both Julian and me now. Any demolition compensation would be split between us. But if Julian had been to the community office alone with papers, no, he wouldn't. Would he? I stood up abruptly, pacing to the window and back. Outside, the street was quiet, lit by the soft glow of street lamps. This was a nice neighborhood, the kind Arthur and I could never have afforded when we were young. Julian had done well for himself, but not well enough to afford a $450,000 townhouse. That's what those places in Willow Creek went for. I'd seen the advertisements in the Sunday paper. Not unless he had a substantial down payment. My old house, the one Arthur and I had bought 40 years ago in what was now a prime redevelopment area, would be worth at least $300,000 in compensation. Maybe more. And Julian had been to the community office. Without me. With papers. The thought that had been forming in my mind crystallized into certainty, cold and sharp as ice. He was trying to handle the demolition without me. He was planning to use my share of the money, my money, Arthur's, and my life savings, turned into property to buy a house I'd never even seen. I walked back to the couch and picked up my phone. My hands were steadier now, steadied by anger instead of sadness. I opened my browser and typed Riverside Community Demolition Compensation. The first result was from the city's official website. I clicked through to the notice. There it was in black and white. Building 3 Units 1-8 were included in the East Side redevelopment project. Homeowners needed to register by March 15th. Preliminary compensation estimates ranged from $280,000 to $320,000 depending on unit size and condition. Our unit was one of the larger ones. Arthur had insisted on the extra bedroom for when Julian visited with his future family. I checked the date. Today was March 8th, 1 week until the deadline, and Julian still hadn't said a word. I set down my phone and walked to the bedroom, the small guest room at the end of the hall that had become my room when I moved in. It had been Clara's home office before, and you could still see the marks on the wall where her desk had been. From the top shelf of the closet, I pulled down the small lockbox where I kept my important documents. Birth certificate, Arthur's death certificate, our marriage license, and there underneath everything else was my copy of the house deed. I held it up to the light, reading the names Arthur Warren and Eleanor Warren. Joint ownership. After Arthur's death, the house should have been transferred to both Julian and me as co-inheritors. Should have been. I needed to know if it had been. I glanced at the clock. 8:15. The community office would be closed, but I could go first thing in the morning. I needed to see those demolition papers for myself. I needed to know exactly what Julian had filed. And I needed to know if my son, my boy, whom I'd raised to be honest and kind, was trying to steal from his own mother. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that photo of the celebration dinner. Julian's happy face. Clara's satisfied smile. Leo on his grandfather's lap. Clara's father's lap, not mine, because I wasn't there. By 6 in the morning, I gave up on sleep entirely. I dressed carefully in my good navy pants and the cream blouse Julian had given me 2 Christmases ago. I wanted to look put together, competent, not like someone who could be easily dismissed. I left a note on the kitchen counter. Gone to run errands. Back later. Mom. The bus ride to my old neighborhood took 40 minutes. I could have asked Julian for a ride, but I didn't want him to know where I was going. Not yet. Not until I understood what was happening. The neighborhood hadn't changed much in 3 years. The corner store where Arthur and I used to buy groceries every Saturday was still there, though it had a new sign. The park where Julian learned to ride his bike looked smaller than I remembered, but the big sycamore tree was still standing, its branches bare in the March morning. The community bulletin board was right inside the main entrance to the residential complex. I could see the demolition notice from across the courtyard, a large official document with red borders impossible to miss. Notice of intent. East Side Redevelopment Project. I read through it carefully. The list of affected buildings, the timeline for demolition, the registration process. And at the bottom in bold letters, all property owners must register in person at the community office by March 15, 2024. Eleanor Warren, is that you? I turned to find Mr. Robert standing behind me, a newspaper tucked under his arm. He'd lived across the hall from Arthur and me for 15 years, a retired postal worker with a kind face and a tendency to tell the same stories twice. Mr. Robert, it's so good to see you. I thought that was you. We haven't seen you around here in ages. How are you? How's that grandson of yours? Leo's wonderful, growing like a weed. I'll bet. He nodded toward the demolition notice. Came to check out the bad news, huh? Shame about the building, but I suppose that's progress for you. Have you registered yet? I asked. Last week. Got everything sorted out. The compensation's fair. I'll give them that. He lowered his voice conspiratorially. Your boy was here too, you know. About a week ago. Had a whole briefcase full of papers. My heart started beating faster. Did you talk to him? Just for a minute. He was in a hurry going into the community office. I asked him how you were doing, and he said you were fine living with them and helping with the little one. Mr. Roberts smiled. You raised a good son there, Eleanor. He's taking care of all this business so you don't have to worry about it. I forced myself to smile back. That's Julian, always looking out for me. After Mr. Robert left, I stood staring at the demolition notice for a long moment. Then I walked across the courtyard to the community office. Sarah, the young woman who managed the office, looked up from her computer with a bright smile when I entered. Mrs. Warren, what a surprise, we haven't seen you in forever. Hello, Sarah. I'm here about the demolition. Oh, of course. She pulled up something on her computer, typing quickly. Let me pull up your file. Building 3, Unit 502, right? That's right. Okay, here we are. She studied the screen, then looked up with a slightly confused expression. Your son was here last week. He submitted all the registration paperwork. Everything's already processed. Could I see what he submitted? Sarah hesitated. Well, normally I'd need authorization to show you someone else's paperwork, but you're listed as a co-owner, so I think it's okay. She printed out several pages and slid them across the counter. I picked up the first page. Property registration for demolition compensation. The property address was correct. The owner names Arthur Warren, deceased, and Eleanor Warren. So far, so good. The second page was a compensation calculation. Based on property size, condition, and market rates, the preliminary compensation was estimated at $285,000. A fortune. More money than Arthur and I had ever had in our bank account at one time. The third page made my blood run cold. Power of attorney form. Due to the advanced age and declining health of property co-owner Eleanor Warren, full authority for all decisions regarding this property is hereby granted to Julian Warren. And at the bottom, a signature that was supposed to be mine. My hand started shaking so badly that the paper rustled loudly in the quiet office. That signature, it looked like my name, but the handwriting was all wrong. The E was too angular. The W looped the wrong way. Someone had tried to forge my signature, and they hadn't even done a good job of it. Mrs. Warren, are you okay? You look pale. Should I get you some water? Sarah's voice seemed to come from very far away. I stared at that forged signature, and something inside me, something that had been cracking and bending for 3 years, finally broke. My son had forged my signature. My son was stealing from me. Mrs. Warren, I looked up at Sarah. Her young face was creased with concern. She was maybe 30, about Clara's age. Young enough that 68 probably seemed ancient to her. Old enough to be fooled by a well-dressed man with a briefcase and a story about his elderly, confused mother. Sarah, she said, and my voice sounded strange even to my own ears, cold and perfectly calm. I need you to listen to me very carefully. I never signed this power of attorney form. That is not my signature. I am not in declining health, and I certainly did not authorize my son to make decisions on my behalf. Sarah's eyes went wide. I don't understand. Your son said— I know what my son said. I set the papers down on the counter with deliberate precision. But I'm telling you right now that this document is fraudulent. I want it revoked immediately. Mrs. Warren, this is a very serious accusation. Are you sure? Because if this signature is forged, that could be a criminal matter. I'm sure. My hands had stopped shaking. In fact, I felt steadier than I had in years. I know my own signature, Sarah. That is not it. Okay. Sarah was typing rapidly on her computer, her professional mask slipping back into place. Let me pull up the forms. If you want to revoke the power of attorney, you'll need to sign a new declaration. And I'll need to see your ID. Of course. I pulled out my driver's license and placed it on the counter. As Sarah printed out forms and made notes in her system, I stood there in the quiet community office and felt something shift inside me. 3 years of being invisible. 3 years of being taken for granted, dismissed, erased from family photos and celebration dinners. 3 years of telling myself it didn't matter that Julian was just busy, that Clara was just stressed, that I should be grateful for a place to live. But this was theft. This was my son trying to steal my home, my security, my husband's legacy. And I was done being invisible. Here you go, Mrs. Warren. Sarah slid several forms across the counter. This one revokes the power of attorney. This one confirms you as the primary contact for all matters regarding the property. And this one requests a formal investigation into the validity of the previous signature. I read each form carefully, then signed my real signature, the one with the rounded E and the proper W, on all 3. Thank you, Sarah. Mrs. Warren, she looked uncomfortable. I have to ask, do you want to press charges for the forgery? Because you can if you want. I have to report it either way, but you'd be the one to file a police report. Did I want my son arrested? Did I want to put Julian in jail? Not yet, I said finally. But I want this documented. I want it on record that the signature was not mine. Of course. I'll make sure everything is properly filed. I thanked her again and walked out of the community office into the bright March morning. The sun was higher now, warming the air. Across the courtyard, I could see our old building. Building 3, Arthur's and my home for 30 years. I still had my key. I'd never taken it off my key ring, some sentimental part of me unable to let go. Now I walked across the courtyard, climbed the familiar stairs to the 5th floor, and stood in front of Unit 502. The door opened smoothly. The smell of disuse hit me immediately, that particular mustiness of a place that's been closed up for too long. Dust motes danced in the sunlight streaming through the curtains. Everything was covered in white sheets, like ghosts of our former life. I walked through slowly, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floor Arthur had insisted on installing himself. The living room where we'd watched Julian grow from a baby to a man. The kitchen where I'd made thousands of meals. The study where Arthur had kept his books and Julian had done his homework at the old desk. The master bedroom where Arthur had died peacefully in his sleep, his hand in mine. This house held 40 years of memories. 40 years of love and laughter and ordinary family life. And Julian had been planning to sell it without even telling me. I walked into the study and opened the desk drawer where Arthur had always kept important papers. Most of it had been cleared out when I moved, but there were still a few old files, insurance documents, warranty information, things that hadn't seemed important enough to take. And there, wedged in the back of the drawer, was a folder I'd never seen before. I pulled it out and opened it. Inside were the demolition office's preliminary assessment papers, the ones Julian must have gotten on his first visit. And underneath those, a handwritten note. The handwriting was Julian's. The note was addressed to Clara. "Honey, once the demolition money comes through, don't tell Mom at first. We'll bring her to see the new house after we've bought it, make it a surprise. I've already designed the basement as her room. It's close to the kitchen, convenient for her to cook, and she won't have to go up and down stairs. The master and kids' bedrooms are all upstairs. I think this will work out perfectly." The basement. They were planning to put me in the basement. I read the note 3 times each time, hoping I'd misunderstood, but the words didn't change. Convenient for her to cook. Not convenient for her mobility, or easier for her to access. Convenient for her to cook, because even in their new dream house, I would still be the housekeeper, the babysitter, the invisible woman who made the meals and minded the child and stayed in her basement room. I carefully folded the note and put it in my purse. Then I took out my phone and photographed every page of the demolition paperwork, including the forged power of attorney. Evidence. I was gathering evidence. My phone buzzed. A text from Julian. "Mom, where are you? Your note just said errands. Everything okay?" I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I typed, "I'm at the old house. I needed to get some things." The response came back almost immediately. "The old house, why, I thought we got everything out of there." "Just some personal items," I wrote back. "I'll be home later." I didn't wait for a response. I turned off my phone and sat down in Arthur's old reading chair, the leather cracked with age, but still solid and comfortable. I needed to think. Option 1, confront Julian immediately. Demand answers. Probably lead to a massive fight with Clara defending him and me being painted as the paranoid, senile old woman. Option 2, go back to the house and pretend I didn't know anything. Continue to be invisible while they finalize their plans. Let them steal from me. Option 3, I looked around the old house. Dusty, neglected, scheduled for demolition. But still mine. Still my home. I could stay here. Not permanently, the building was being demolished, but for now, for a few days. Long enough to figure out what I really wanted to do. Long enough to make Julian and Clara sweat. I stood up and walked to the bedroom. The bed was still made with the sheets from 3 years ago. They'd need to be washed, but they'd do for now. I opened the closet and found some of my old clothes still hanging there. Things I hadn't bothered to take because I didn't think I'd need them. I pulled out my phone and called Helen, my old friend from before I moved. "Eleanor, what a wonderful surprise. I was just thinking about you." "Helen, I have a favor to ask. Do you still have that spare key I gave you?" "Of course. You told me to keep it, remember?" "Good. I'm staying at the old house for a few days. Could you bring me some groceries? Just basics, bread, milk, eggs, that sort of thing." There was a pause. "Eleanor, honey, is everything all right?" I looked out the window at the neighborhood where I'd spent most of my adult life. "No," I said honestly. "But it will be." "I'll be there in an hour," Helen said firmly. "And Eleanor, you can tell me about it when I get there." After we hung up, I walked through the apartment one more time, opening curtains and windows to air out the rooms. The March breeze was cool, but not unpleasant. The apartment slowly came back to life around me. My phone was still off, but I could imagine the messages piling up. Julian would be confused, then worried, then angry. Clara would probably be irritated that I wasn't there to make dinner and put Leo to bed. Good. Let them worry. Let them wonder. For 3 years, I'd been the one worrying, the one wondering where I fit in their lives. Now it was their turn. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where Julian had done his homework, where Arthur and I had shared thousands of meals, and I waited for Helen to arrive. For the first time in 3 years, I was about to make a decision entirely for myself. And it felt terrifying. And it felt right. Helen arrived with 2 bags of groceries and a fierceness in her eyes that reminded me why we'd been friends for 30 years. "All right, Eleanor Warren, you're going to tell me everything." She set the bags on the counter and turned to face me, hands on her hips. "And don't you dare try to minimize it. I can see it written all over your face." So I told her. Everything. The celebration dinner I wasn't invited to. The text about the leftovers. The demolition I wasn't told about. The forged signature. The note about the basement room. By the time I finished, Helen's face had gone through shock anger and finally settled into a tight-lipped fury that would have made lesser people run for cover. That absolute... She stopped herself and took a deep breath. "Eleanor, that's fraud. That's theft. That's, you can press charges, right?" "I know." I wrapped my hands around the cup of tea she'd made. "But he's my son, Helen. He's your son who was planning to lock you in a basement and steal your house." "I know," I said again, quieter this time. Helen sat down across from me, her anger deflating into concern. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet. That's why I'm here. I need time to think." "Does he know where you are?" "He knows I'm at the old house. He doesn't know why." As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. Helen and I looked at each other. "Do you want me to answer it?" she asked. I shook my head and stood up. "No, I need to do this." I opened the door to find Julian standing in the hallway, his face flushed and his hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. "Mom," his voice was tight with relief and frustration. "What are you doing here? I've been calling and your phone is off and—" He stopped, noticing Helen in the background. "Oh, hello, Mrs. Martinez." "Julian." Helen's voice was cold enough to freeze water. He looked between us, confusion creasing his forehead. "Mom, what's going on? Why are you here? The house is being demolished. It's not safe to stay here." "Is it not?" I stepped aside to let him in, then closed the door behind him. "Funny you never mentioned that the house was being demolished." I had to hear it from Carol. His face went pale. I was going to tell you." "When?" I kept my voice level calm. "Before or after you cashed the compensation check?" "Mom, I don't know what you think." "I went to the community office this morning, Julian. I walked to my purse and pulled out my phone, opening the photos I'd taken. I saw the demolition papers. I saw the power of attorney form, with my signature. Except it's not my signature, is it?" The color drained completely from Julian's face. "Mom, I can explain. Can you—" I held up the phone, showing him the photo of the forged signature. "Can you explain why you forged your mother's signature? Can you explain why you were planning to handle the sale of my home without even telling me about it?" "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" My voice rose despite my best efforts to stay calm. "Explain it to me, Julian. Make me understand how my son, the boy I raised to be honest and good, thought it was acceptable to forge documents and steal from his own mother." "I wasn't stealing." He ran his hands through his hair, agitated. "Mom, the money was always going to be split. I was just trying to handle the paperwork so you wouldn't have to worry about it." "Don't lie to me." I pulled out the handwritten note and held it up. "I found this too. Don't tell Mom at first. The basement room convenient for cooking. Tell me again how you weren't stealing from me." Julian's mouth opened and closed several times. Behind him, Helen made a disgusted sound. "I should go," she said, standing up. "Before I say something I shouldn't." She walked past Julian without looking at him, then paused at the door to squeeze my hand. "Call me if you need anything. Anything at all." After she left, Julian and I stood in the apartment's living room, facing each other like strangers. "Sit down," I said finally. "You're going to tell me the truth. All of it." He sat on the couch, his shoulders slumped. For a moment, he looked like a child again, like the little boy who'd broken his father's watch and had to confess. "Clara's parents," he started, then stopped. "Her parents are very successful. Her brother just bought a house in Willow Creek. 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. Clara's mother keeps asking when we're going to upgrade, stop living in a starter home. So you thought you'd use my money to keep up with them. It's not like that." He looked up frustrated. Mom, do you have any idea how expensive everything is? Leo's preschool costs $2,000 a month. $2,000 for preschool, and Clara wants him in private school, and her parents keep comparing us to her brother, and I needed this. You needed to steal from me. I wasn't stealing. The house is in my name too, after Dad died. After Dad died, the house was supposed to be split between us equally, I interrupted. That was the will. That was always the plan. You know that. I know, but Mom, you're living with us. You don't need the money. We're taking care of you. Something snapped inside me. All the patience, all the understanding, all the years of making excuses for him, it all shattered in that moment. Taking care of me. My voice was quiet, but Julian flinched as if I'd shouted. Is that what you call it? Using me as a free housekeeper, a free babysitter, forgetting to invite me to your celebration dinner, planning to stick me in a basement room, convenient for cooking. The basement is really nice. I don't care if it's the Taj Mahal, I was shouting now. You forged my signature, Julian. You were planning to take my share of the house, my home, mine, and your father's, and use it to buy yourself a mansion so you could impress your in-laws, and you were going to hide me in the basement like... I couldn't finish. Tears of rage and hurt were burning in my eyes, and I refused to cry in front of him. Julian stood up, his own frustration boiling over. Fine. You want the truth? Clara said you'd never agree to sell. She said you'd be all sentimental about the house, that you'd rather let it sit empty than let us use the money. And she was right, wasn't she? Look at you. You'd rather stay in this dusty old place than be practical. Practical. I stared at him. You think stealing from your mother is practical? I wasn't. He stopped, his jaw clenched. Clara's pregnant again. The words hung in the air between us. What? She's pregnant. 8 weeks. We found out last month. He sat back down heavily. We need more space. We need a house with 3 bedrooms, at least maybe 4. And with my promotion, we qualify for a mortgage on the Willow Creek properties, but only if we have enough for the down payment. So you decided to use my money. It's Dad's money, too. He looked up at me, and for the first time I saw genuine desperation in his eyes. Mom, don't you want us to have a good life? Don't you want Leo to grow up in a nice house? Don't you want your new grandchild to have everything they need? Of course I do, I said quietly. But not at the expense of my dignity, not by being lied to and stolen from. I'm sorry. His voice cracked. I'm so sorry, Mom. Clara said it would be easier this way, that you'd just get stressed about the paperwork, and I thought I was protecting you. You thought wrong. We sat in silence for a long moment. Outside, I could hear children playing in the courtyard, their laughter echoing up to the 5th floor. I revoked the power of attorney, I said finally. Sarah at the community office has documented that the signature was forged. The property is in both our names, Julian. Any decision about it requires both our signatures. He nodded slowly, not meeting my eyes. I want my share, I continued. 40%. His head snapped up. 40, but that's $114,000 based on the preliminary assessment. You'll get 60%, $171,000, more than enough for a down payment on a nice house. I kept my voice steady. But not a Willow Creek mansion. Something more modest. Something you can actually afford. Clara won't accept that. Then Clara will have to adjust her expectations. I stood up. And Julian, I'm not coming back to live with you. What? He jumped to his feet. Mom, you can't. Where will you go? I don't know yet. But I can't live in a house where I'm invisible. Where I'm taken for granted. Where my own son thinks so little of me that he'd forge my signature. I don't think little of you. His voice broke. Mom, you're everything to me. You raised me. You sacrificed everything for me. I know that. Then why did you treat me like a burden? He opened his mouth, then closed it. No answer came. I need you to leave now, I said. I'll stay here tonight. Tomorrow we can meet with lawyers and settle the house properly. But tonight I need to be alone. Mom, please, Julian. I was so tired suddenly. Tired down to my bones. Just go. He walked to the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. I love you, Mom. I know I messed up, but I do love you. I know you do, I said. But love without respect isn't enough. After he left, I stood in the middle of my old living room and finally let myself cry. I woke up the next morning to sunlight streaming through the bedroom curtains. For a moment I was disoriented. The ceiling was wrong. The light came from the wrong angle. Then I remembered I was in my old bedroom, in my old house, alone for the first time in 3 years. The silence was strange. No Leo calling Grandma from down the hall. No sound of Julian's alarm going off. No Clara's hairdryer humming through the walls. Just silence. And somehow it felt like peace. I made myself a simple breakfast, scrambled eggs and toast coffee from the jar Helen had brought. As I ate at the kitchen table, my phone buzzed with messages I'd been ignoring since last night. Julian, Mom, please call me. We need to talk. Julian, Clara wants to apologize. Can we come over, Julian? At least let me know you're okay. Clara, Mrs. Warren. Julian told me everything. I'm so sorry. Please come home so we can discuss this properly. And one from a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Warren, this is David Martinez, Helen's nephew. She asked me to reach out. I'm a real estate attorney. I'd be happy to offer a free consultation about your property situation. Please call when you're ready. I saved David's number but didn't call anyone back. Not yet. I wasn't ready. Instead, I spent the morning cleaning. I stripped the bed and took the sheets to the laundromat down the street, the same one Arthur and I had used for 30 years. Mrs. Kim, who ran the place, nearly dropped her basket when she saw me. Eleanor, is that really you? I heard you moved away. I did. I'm just back for a visit. Visiting an empty apartment. She raised an eyebrow. Honey, you want to talk about it? I almost said no, but something about Mrs. Kim's kind, knowing eyes made me pause. My son tried to sell my house without telling me. Mrs. Kim made a disgusted sound. Children these days. My daughter tried to put me in a nursing home last year. Said I was too old to live alone. She folded a towel with sharp, angry movements. I told her, I'm 65, not 95. I can still kick your behind if I need to. Despite everything, I laughed. What did you do? I got a lawyer and made sure she knew she wouldn't get a penny of my money if she tried that again. Mrs. Kim looked at me seriously. Eleanor, you're a sweet woman. Too sweet sometimes. Don't let people walk on you just because they're family. Her words stayed with me as I walked back to the apartment with my clean sheets. Don't let people walk on you just because they're family. That afternoon, Helen came by with lunch, homemade sandwiches, and her famous potato salad. I called David, she said without preamble. He'll come by tomorrow morning if that works for you. Helen, I can't ask your nephew to work for free. You're not asking? I'm insisting. She set out the food on the kitchen table. Eleanor, what Julian did is serious. You need proper legal representation. He's my son. And I'm your friend. And I'm telling you, you need a lawyer. She sat down across from me. Now eat. You look like you haven't had a decent meal in days. She wasn't wrong. I'd barely eaten since Friday night. The food was delicious, and I found myself eating more than I'd planned. So, Helen said casually, what's your plan long-term, I mean? I don't know. I put down my sandwich. I can't go back to Julian's house. Not after everything. But I can't stay here either. The building's being demolished in 6 months. You could get your own place. With your share of the compensation money, you could buy a small condo. Nothing fancy but yours. The idea sent a little thrill through me. My own place. Not Arthur's place, not Julian's place. Mine. I'm 68 years old, I said. Is it crazy to start over at 68? My mother started over at 72 after my father died, Helen said firmly. Bought herself a little apartment in Florida, joined a book club, learned to paint. She said those were the happiest years of her life. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. It's never too late, Eleanor. After Helen left, I sat on the balcony with a cup of tea and thought about what she'd said. Starting over. A fresh start at 68. It was terrifying. It was also exciting in a way I hadn't felt in years. My phone rang. This time it was Julian's sister Amanda. Aunt Eleanor, Julian told me what happened. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I had no idea he was planning any of that. You were at the celebration dinner, I said quietly. There was a pause. I know, and I should have asked where you were. I just assumed. I don't know what I assumed. That you didn't want to come, maybe. But that's stupid. Of course you would have wanted to be there. She sighed. Julian's an idiot. Despite everything, I smiled a little. He's your brother. He's still an idiot. Look, I know you probably don't want to see anyone right now, but if you need anything, and I mean anything, you call me, okay? Mark and I are on your side. After we hung up, I realized something. I did have people on my side. Helen, Amanda, and Mark. even Mrs. Kim at the laundromat. I wasn't as alone as I'd thought. That night I slept better than I had in months. David Martinez arrived at 9 o'clock sharp Tuesday morning. He was in his early 30s, dressed in a crisp suit with his aunt's kind eyes and a firm handshake. "Mrs. Warren, thank you for seeing me. Aunt Helen filled me in on the basics, but I'd like to hear the full story from you." I told him everything, showing him the photos I'd taken of the forged documents and the note about the basement room. His expression grew darker as I talked. "Mrs. Warren, this is fraud. Clear-cut fraud." He made notes on his tablet. "You could press criminal charges if you wanted to. I don't want my son arrested." "I understand, but you need to know your options." He pulled up something on his tablet. "The house is in joint ownership between you and your son, correct?" "Yes. After my husband died, it should have been split 50-50. "Good. That means any sale or transfer requires both signatures, real signatures. The forged power of attorney is void." He looked up. "Here's what I recommend we draw up a formal property agreement. You get your 40% of the compensation, $114,000, based on the assessment you showed me. Julian gets 60%, everything legal and documented. Can we do that without going to court?" "If Julian cooperates, yes. I'll draft the agreement today. You and Julian both sign in front of witnesses. It becomes a legally binding contract." He paused. "But Mrs. Warren, I have to ask, are you sure about 40-60 legally you're entitled to 50%? I'd thought about this all night. Julian has 2 children to support. I want to be fair, not punitive. 40% gives me enough to start over. 60% gives him enough for a good house, just not the mansion he wanted." David nodded approvingly. "That's generous of you. More generous than he deserves, honestly." He typed something into his tablet. "I'll have the documents ready by tomorrow. In the meantime, I need you to sign a few things: formal revocation of that power of attorney, confirmation that you're of sound mind and not acting under duress, that sort of thing." We spent the next hour going through paperwork. David was thorough and patient, explaining every clause and every implication. "One more thing," he said as he was packing up. "Where are you planning to live after this is settled? Because if you need recommendations for senior living communities, or I can still live independently." I said a little sharper than I intended. "I know that. I meant communities for active seniors. My grandmother lives in one. It's more like a regular apartment complex, but with activities and social events. She loves it. Says it's like college, but with better knees." He smiled. "I can send you some information if you'd like." That would be nice. Thank you." After David left, I sat down to compose a text to Julian. "I've hired a lawyer. We'll settle the house division formally. I want this done properly and legally. I'll let you know when the paperwork is ready to sign." His response came within minutes. "Mom, please, can we just talk about this? Do we really need lawyers?" "Yes," I typed back. "We really do." An hour later, my phone rang. It was Clara. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "Mrs. Warren?" Clara's voice was different from usual, smaller, uncertain. "Can I please come see you, just me, not Julian? I need to talk to you." Every instinct told me to say no, but I was curious about what she had to say for herself. "All right, 2 o'clock this afternoon." Clara arrived exactly at 2, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, no designer clothes today. Her eyes were red, and she looked like she hadn't slept well. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, hovering in the doorway. I gestured her inside, but didn't offer tea or make any of the usual hospitable gestures. She'd lost the right to those. We sat at the kitchen table, in awkward silence stretching between us. "I'm sorry," Clara said finally. "I know that's not enough, but I am. I'm so sorry." I waited. Sorry wasn't enough, she was right about that. "It was my idea," she continued, her voice shaking. "The whole thing. Julian wanted to tell you about the house, wanted to include you in the planning, but I convinced him not to. I told him you'd be difficult, that you'd want to keep the old house for sentimental reasons, that it would be easier to just handle it." "Steal from me, you mean?" She flinched. "Yes, steal from you. That's what it was, and I'm not going to pretend it wasn't." She looked up, tears streaming down her face. "My parents. They've always compared Julian to my brother. My brother who has the big house and the expensive car and the country club membership. And when Julian got promoted, I thought finally we could compete. Finally we could prove we were just as successful. So you decided to use my money to keep up with your brother." "Yes." She wiped her eyes. "And it was wrong. So completely wrong. You've done nothing but help us since you moved in. You take care of Leo, you cook, you clean. You do everything, and we just took advantage of that. I took advantage of that. I studied her carefully. She seemed genuine, but Clara had always been good at seeming genuine. There's more, she said, her voice dropping. I'm pregnant. Julian told you that, right? He mentioned it. I've been so sick this time, worse than with Leo. And I've been terrified of having 2 kids, terrified of not being able to handle it all, terrified of what my mother would say if we couldn't afford a bigger house. She looked down at her hands. I thought if we had the perfect house in the perfect neighborhood, then everything else would fall into place. I'd be the perfect daughter, the perfect wife, the perfect mother. Despite my anger, something in her words resonated. I remembered being a young mother trying to live up to impossible standards. Clara, I said quietly, having a mansion in Willow Creek won't make you happy. It won't make you a better mother. It'll just give you a bigger house to clean and a bigger mortgage to worry about. I know that now. She looked up at me. Mrs. Warren, I'm not asking you to forgive me. I don't deserve that. But I'm asking you to believe that I'm sorry and that I'm going to do better. Are you? I leaned forward. Because here's what I need to know, Clara. If I do get my share of the money and I will get it legally and properly, are you going to resent me for it? Are you going to make my son choose between you and me? No, she said it firmly. I've already told Julian that you deserve every penny. More honestly, and I told my mother to stop comparing us to my brother. I told her that if she can't be supportive of our family the way it is, then she doesn't need to be part of our lives. That surprised me. You stood up to your mother. I should have done it years ago. She smiled weakly. Julian's been trying to stand up to her since we got married. I finally realized why. We sat in silence for a moment. The basement room, I said finally. That was your idea too. She nodded miserably. I thought if you were downstairs, you'd still be close enough to help with the kids, but you'd have your own space. I genuinely thought I was being considerate, but reading that note back now, seeing how it sounds. Convenient for cooking? God, I'm horrible. You're not horrible, I said, surprising myself. You're just young and under pressure, and you made bad choices because of it. That doesn't excuse what I did. No, it doesn't. I stood up. Clara, I accept your apology, but I can't come back to live with you. Not now. Maybe not ever. I understand. She stood too. But maybe you could still come visit Leo. He misses you so much. He asks for you every day. My heart clenched. Of course I'll visit Leo. He's my grandson. None of this is his fault. Thank you. Clara walked to the door, then turned back. Mrs. Warren, Julian really does love you. He got lost somewhere along the way. We both did. After she left, I sat on the couch and let out a long breath. That conversation had gone better than I'd expected, and yet it changed nothing fundamental. I still couldn't trust them. Not yet. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Documents ready. Can you and Julian meet tomorrow at 10 a.m., my office downtown? I forwarded the message to Julian and got back a single word. Yes. Tomorrow then. Tomorrow we'd make it official. Tomorrow I'd get my independence back. Tonight I would allow myself to feel sad about it. David's office was in a modern building downtown, all glass and steel. I arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in my best outfit, a navy suit I'd bought for Arthur's funeral and hadn't worn since. Julian was already there, sitting in the waiting area. He looked terrible, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, his shirt wrinkled. He stood up when he saw me. Mom. Julian. We didn't hug. We didn't even shake hands. We just stood there awkward and distant until David's assistant called us in. David's office was professional, but warm, with family photos on the desk and diplomas on the wall. He shook both our hands and gestured to chairs across from his desk. Thank you both for coming. I know this is difficult, but we're going to handle it professionally and fairly. He opened a folder and pulled out several documents. I've prepared a property division agreement. It's straightforward. Mrs. Warren receives 40% of the demolition compensation, $114,000. Julian receives 60%, $171,000. All existing documents with forged signatures are voided. Both parties confirm this division is voluntary and not made under duress. He slid copies across the desk to each of us. Take your time reading it. If you have any questions, ask. Once you sign this, becomes legally binding. I read through every word carefully. It was clear and fair, just as David had promised. Julian read his copy too, his jaw clenched tight. There's one additional clause, David said, pointing to the bottom of the second page. Mrs. Warren has requested that $30,000 of her portion be placed in a trust fund for Leo Warren with Mrs. Warren as the trustee. Julian, you'll need to consent to this as Leo's parent. Julian looked up sharply. Mom, you don't have to. I want to, I said firmly. It's for Leo's education. College, trade school, whatever he needs when he's older. It's already decided. Julian's eyes filled with tears. You're still thinking about Leo, after everything. He's my grandson. I'll always think about Leo. I picked up the pen David offered. But this is for him, not for you. Don't forget that. I signed my name, my real signature, clear and unmistakable on all 3 copies. Julian stared at his unsigned documents for a long moment. Then he picked up the pen. I'm sorry, Mom, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I know, and I did know. I could see it in every line of his face, hear it in his voice. But sorry didn't fix what was broken. He signed. David's assistant came in to witness the signatures, along with another attorney from the office. It was official. Done. The demolition office will process this within a week, David said, gathering the signed documents. Compensation checks should arrive within 30 days. Any questions? No, Julian and I said at the same time. Then we're finished here. David stood and shook our hands again. I'll send you both copies of the signed agreement. In the elevator down to the lobby, Julian and I stood in painful silence. When the doors opened on the ground floor, he finally spoke. Mom, where are you going to live after the compensation comes through? I don't know yet. Somewhere nearby, probably, so I can still see Leo. You know you're always welcome. I know. I stepped out of the elevator. But I need my own space, Julian. I need to be Eleanor again, not just Mom or Grandma. I understand. He paused. Can I at least take you to lunch? Please? I almost said no. But looking at my son's haggard face, I remembered all the lunches I'd made for him as a child. All the times I'd packed his favorite sandwich with the crusts cut off, included a note that said, I love you, on a napkin. All right, I said. Lunch. We went to a small cafe 2 blocks away. Julian ordered a sandwich he barely touched. I had soup I couldn't taste. Clara told me she came to see you, Julian said. She did. She meant what she said, about being sorry. I know. I stirred my soup absently. Julian, I need to ask you something. When did you stop seeing me? What do you mean? When did I stop being your mother and start being just the help? I looked up at him. Was it gradual, or was there a moment when it changed? Julian set down his sandwich and rubbed his face with both hands. I don't know. I don't think it was one thing. After Dad died, you seemed so lost, and when Leo was born, you lit up again. You loved taking care of him, so I thought I was helping you by letting you do that, by giving you purpose. By giving me purpose, I repeated slowly. Julian, I'm a person, not a charity case. I had purpose before Leo was born. I know that now. I do. But at the time, he struggled for words. Clara was always complaining that you did things differently than she would. The way you folded Leo's clothes, the food you made, the schedule you kept him on. And I was always defending you, saying, that's just how Mom does things. And somewhere along the way, it became easier to just let her have her way. To let you become invisible rather than deal with the conflict. You chose her over me. Yes, he met my eyes. And I was wrong. I should have set boundaries. I should have made it clear that you weren't the hired help, you were my mother. But I didn't. And I'm sorry. A young mother walked past our table holding a little boy's hand. The boy was laughing at something, his face bright with joy. It reminded me of Leo. I miss him, I said softly. I miss Leo so much it hurts. He misses you too. He asks about you every day. Julian leaned forward. Mom, I know you need space. I respect that. But could you maybe come visit this weekend just for a few hours? Leo's birthday is next month and he wants to show you his new dinosaur book. I thought about it. Could I go back to that house even just to visit? Could I separate my anger at Julian and Clara from my love for Leo? I'll think about it, I said. He said. It wasn't yes. But it wasn't no either. After lunch, Julian walked me to the bus stop. Mom, I want you to know. I looked at the trust fund you set up for Leo, and I'm going to match it. Another $30,000, so he'll have $60,000 for college. I looked at him in surprise. Julian, you need that money for your house. I'll find another way. This is more important. He smiled sadly. Maybe it's time I learned to live within my means instead of trying to impress Clara's parents. The bus pulled up. I climbed the steps, then turned back to look at my son. Julian, thank you for the trust fund. Thank you for still loving Leo, even after everything. As the bus pulled away, I watched Julian standing on the corner, his hands in his pockets looking smaller and more lost than I'd ever seen him. My son was broken. Our relationship was broken. But maybe, just maybe, it could be repaired. Not today, not next week, but someday. For now, I had myself to think about. Eleanor Warren, 68 years old, starting over. And for the first time in 3 years, that didn't sound like an ending. It sounded like a beginning. Helen called me that evening while I was making dinner, just pasta and vegetables, simple but satisfying. So how did it go? I told her about the signing, about lunch with Julian, about his offer to match the trust fund. Well, Helen said when I finished, that's something at least, he's trying. He is, I agreed. Helen David mentioned something about senior living communities, for active seniors, he said. Are you interested? Because I've been looking at one myself. That surprised me. You have, Eleanor, I'm 72. This house is too big for me now. I've been thinking about downsizing to something with less maintenance. There's a community about 20 minutes from here, Riverside Senior Living. They have apartments, social activities, even art classes. She paused. Want to come look at it with me this weekend? Yes, I'd like that. Saturday morning, then. I'll pick you up at 10. After we hung up, I looked around the apartment. In 6 months, this building would be demolished. I needed to figure out where I was going. The idea of a senior community had seemed depressing when David first mentioned it, like admitting I was old, used up. But the way Helen described it sounded different, like a fresh start. The next morning, I walked to the community center I'd passed on my way to the laundromat. I'd seen flyers in the window advertising classes and activities, but had never gone inside. A friendly woman at the front desk greeted me. Good morning. Are you here for a specific class? I'm just looking around, I admitted. I used to live in this neighborhood, and I'm back for a while. Well, feel free to explore. We have a lot going on today. There's a calligraphy class starting in 10 minutes in room 3 if you're interested. Calligraphy. I'd loved it when I was young, had even taken a class in college. But that was 45 years ago. I haven't done calligraphy in decades. Perfect time to start again, she smiled warmly. James is teaching. He's wonderful with beginners. Before I could talk myself out of it, I found myself walking to room 3. The classroom had about a dozen people, all older, mostly women in their 60s and 70s. A kind-looking man with silver hair and glasses was setting up supplies at the front. Welcome, welcome. He gestured to an empty seat. We're just getting started. I'm James. Have you done calligraphy before? A long time ago, I said, sitting down. He handed me a brush paper and a small dish for ink. Then you'll remember it's all about relaxation and flow. Let's start with basic strokes today. For the next 2 hours, I lost myself in the simple act of making marks on paper. My hand remembered things my mind had forgotten: how to hold the brush, how to control the pressure, how to breathe with each stroke. Beautiful, James said, looking over my shoulder at a character I'd just finished. You have excellent bone structure in your strokes. You must have had a good teacher. My grandmother taught me, I said, surprised by the memory. She was from China. She said calligraphy was meditation. Your grandmother was a wise woman, James smiled. You know we meet every Tuesday and Thursday at 10. You're welcome to join us any time. After class, a woman about my age approached me. Hi, I'm Patricia, but everyone calls me Pat. I couldn't help noticing, was that really your first time back after decades? It was. You're a natural. I've been coming for 2 years and my characters still look like drunk spiders, she laughed. Are you new to the area? Sort of. It's complicated. The best stories usually are. Pat pulled out a card. A few of us usually go for tea after Thursday's class. You should join us if you're around. We're a friendly bunch, I promise. I took the card, feeling something warm bloom in my chest. Friendship. Community. Things I'd been missing for 3 years. I'd like that, I said. Walking home, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The calligraphy class, the prospect of visiting the senior community with Helen. Even the painful lunch with Julian, all of it felt like steps toward something new. My phone buzzed, a text from Julian with a photo attached. The image showed Leo holding up a crayon drawing. It was mostly scribbles, but I could make out what might be a person with curly hair. The text read, "Leo drew you. He says he misses you. Can you visit this weekend?" I stared at the drawing for a long time. Then I typed Saturday afternoon, just for a few hours. The response was immediate. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you so much." I slipped the phone back in my pocket and continued walking. Saturday, I'd visit the senior community with Helen in the morning. Then I'd visit Leo in the afternoon. Both steps forward. Both part of building this new life. For the first time since that awful Friday night dinner, I felt something like hope. Saturday morning arrived with clear blue skies and the promise of spring. I dressed carefully in comfortable slacks and a soft lavender sweater, not too formal, not too casual. Helen picked me up at exactly 10 o'clock in her silver sedan. "You look nice," she said as I climbed in. "Nervous." "A little," I admitted. I keep thinking this is admitting defeat somehow, like I'm giving up and accepting that I'm old. Helen snorted. "Eleanor, we are old. The question is whether we're going to sit around waiting to die or actually live. Riverside isn't a nursing home. It's an apartment community that happens to have people our age and activities we might enjoy. Big difference." The drive took 25 minutes. Riverside Senior Living was in a quiet neighborhood with tree-lined streets and well-maintained houses. The community itself was a series of low-rise buildings arranged around a central courtyard with gardens and walking paths. "It's beautiful," I said, surprised. "Wait until you see inside." A cheerful woman in her 50s met us at the main entrance. "Mrs. Martinez, Mrs. Warren, I'm Donna, the community director. Welcome to Riverside." She led us through the main building, which housed common areas, a library with floor-to-ceiling windows, a fitness center with equipment designed for seniors, an art studio with paintings in progress on easels, and a large dining hall that looked more like a restaurant than a cafeteria. "We offer 3 meal plans," Donna explained, "but all our apartments have full kitchens if you prefer to cook. Many residents do a mix, cooking some meals, eating in the dining hall when they want company or don't feel like cooking." "What kind of activities do you offer?" I asked. "Oh, everything. Book clubs, art classes, yoga, water aerobics, movie nights, day trips to museums and theaters. We have a vegetable garden that residents maintain together. Wednesday mornings we have a coffee social where people just gather and chat. There's even a poker group that meets Friday nights." She smiled. "The philosophy here is that retirement should be active and social, not isolating." She showed us several apartment layouts. The studios were cozy but well-designed. The one-bedrooms were spacious with large windows and small balconies. "This is the unit we have available now," Donna said, opening the door to a one-bedroom on the 3rd floor. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating hardwood floors and a modern kitchen. The bedroom was small but adequate, and the bathroom had safety features built in so seamlessly they didn't look institutional at all. The balcony overlooked the courtyard garden. I walked to the window and looked out. Below, 2 women were working in the garden, laughing about something. An elderly man was reading on a bench. It looked peaceful. It looked like community. "What do you think?" Helen asked quietly, coming to stand beside me. I took a deep breath. "I think it looks like a home." "There's a 2-bedroom available too," Donna said. "Some residents have chosen to live together, splitting the costs and having companionship. Just a thought." Helen and I looked at each other. "Too soon?" she asked. "Maybe," I said, "but worth considering." We spent another hour touring the facility and talking to residents. Everyone we met was friendly and seemed genuinely happy. A man named Tom told us about the woodworking shop in the basement. A woman named Susan raved about the book club. Patricia Pat, the woman from my calligraphy class, was there visiting a friend and nearly knocked me over with her hug when she saw me. "Eleanor, are you thinking of moving here? Please say yes. We need more people for the calligraphy group. James teaches a class here on Mondays too." By the time we left, I had application forms in hand and a head full of possibilities. "So," Helen asked as we drove back. "I want it," I said simply. "The 1-bedroom. With my share of the demolition money, I can afford it. Not just for a few years, I can buy it outright and still have money left over." "You're sure?" I'm sure. And I was. For the first time in weeks, I was completely sure about something. That afternoon, I took the bus to Julian's house. My hands were sweating as I rang the doorbell, but before I could second-guess myself, the door flew open and Leo launched himself at my legs. Grandma, you came!" I crouched down, my knees protesting but holding, and wrapped my arms around him. He smelled like apple juice and crayons and little boy, and I felt tears prick my eyes. "Of course I came, sweetheart. I missed you so much." "I missed you too. I drawed you a picture. Come see." He grabbed my hand and pulled me inside. Julian and Clara stood in the entryway watching. Clara's eyes were red like she'd been crying. Julian looked exhausted but hopeful. "Hi, Mom," he said softly. "Julian, Clara." "Thank you for coming," Clara said. Can I get you some tea? Coffee? Tea would be nice." Leo dragged me to the living room where his drawings were spread all over the coffee table. "This one is you, and this one is me, and this one is us at the park." I looked at each drawing, carefully admiring his interpretation of the world. In his drawings, I was always there, always present, always important. It made my heart ache. Clara brought tea, setting it down carefully. "Mrs. Warren, I made your favorite cookies, the lemon ones." She had made them. I could tell from the slightly uneven shapes that these weren't store-bought. Clara had actually baked for me. "Thank you," I said, taking one. It was delicious, lemony, and sweet, and still warm. Julian sat in the armchair across from me. "Mom, we wanted to talk to you about something. Clara and I have been doing a lot of thinking this week." Here it comes, I thought. They want to convince me to move back in. "We're not going to buy in Willow Creek," Clara said. "We found a different house, smaller, older, but in a good neighborhood. 3 bedrooms, which is enough for our family. It's well within our budget even without the full demolition money," Julian added. "We put in an offer yesterday. It was accepted this morning." I looked between them. "That's wonderful, really." "There's something else," Clara continued. She glanced at Julian, who nodded encouragingly. "I called my mother. I told her that we weren't going to be competing with my brother anymore, that we were going to live within our means and be happy with what we have. And I told her that if she couldn't support that, she needed to step back." "How did she take it?" "Not well," Clara admitted. "But that's her problem, not mine, not ours." She reached over and took Julian's hand. "We've been living for my parents' approval for too long. It almost cost us everything that really matters." Leo climbed onto my lap, oblivious to the adult conversation. "Grandma, do you want to see my dinosaur book?" "In a minute, sweetheart." I stroked his hair. "Julian, Clara, I'm glad you're making these changes. I really am. But I need you to understand I'm not coming back to live here." "We know," Julian said quickly. "Clara told me about your conversation. We understand. But Mom, we want to do better. We want you in our lives not as a housekeeper or a babysitter, but as Leo's grandmother, as my mother." "We were hoping," Clara said hesitantly, "that maybe you'd come for dinner once a week and that Leo could visit you sometimes wherever you end up." "I'd like that," I said. "Actually, I have some news too. I'm going to buy an apartment at Riverside Senior Living. It's a community for active seniors about 30 minutes from here." "Riverside?" Julian's face lit up. "Mom, that place is supposed to be amazing. One of the partners at my firm has his mother there. She loves it. I toured it this morning. I'm going to put in an application next week." "Can I visit you there, Grandma?" Leo asked, looking up at me with his big brown eyes. "Of course you can. There's a playground and a garden. You'll love it." We spent the rest of the afternoon playing with Leo. Julian and Clara kept their distance, giving me space, but staying close enough that we could talk. It was awkward, but it was a start. When it was time to leave, Leo clung to my legs. "Don't go, Grandma. I'll see you next weekend, okay? I promise." "You promise, promise." "I promise, promise." Julian walked me to the door. "Mom, about the demolition check, it should come through in about 3 weeks. David said he'd handle the disbursement, make sure everything goes directly to our accounts." "Good. And Mom, thank you. For the trust fund. For still seeing Leo. For not giving up on us completely." I looked at my son, this man I'd raised who'd hurt me so badly, but who was trying to do better. "Julian, I'm your mother. I'll never give up on you. But I also won't let you treat me that way again." "I know. I won't. I promise." On the bus ride home, I thought about how much had changed in just 1 week. The legal papers were signed. I had a new home picked out. I was rebuilding my relationship with Julian and Clara on my terms, not theirs. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't just existing in someone else's life. I was living my own. Tuesday morning, I woke up with a headache. Nothing serious, just a dull ache behind my eyes. I took some aspirin and went to my calligraphy class anyway. James was teaching us a more advanced technique today, and I was determined to master it. I'd been practicing at home every evening, filling pages with characters, feeling my hand remember skills I'd forgotten I had. "Beautiful Eleanor," James said, looking over my shoulder. "You have a real gift for this." Pat, working beside me, groaned. "Show off. Mine still looks like a chicken walked through ink." We all laughed, and I felt that warm sense of belonging I'd been missing for so long. After class, Pat invited me to join the group for tea. 6 of us went to a small cafe nearby, all women in their 60s and 70s, all with stories about difficult children or lost husbands or second chances at life. "My daughter tried to put me in a nursing home," one woman said. "Can you believe it? I'm 69 and ran a half marathon last year." "My son wanted me to sell my house and move in with him," another added. "So his wife could have a live-in babysitter." I told him absolutely not. They were like me, I realized. Women who'd been expected to sacrifice everything for their families who were finally learning to say no. "What's your story, Eleanor?" Pat asked. "You've been quiet." So I told them. Not everything, but enough. About Julian forging my signature. About the celebration dinner I wasn't invited to. About the basement room and the leftover text message. By the time I finished, the women around the table were nodding in understanding and muttering in solidarity. "You did the right thing," one woman said firmly. "Standing up for yourself." "My therapist calls it setting healthy boundaries," another added. "Whatever you call it, it's about time we stopped being doormats." That evening I felt good, better than I had in years. I practiced my calligraphy, made a simple dinner, and called Helen to finalize our plans to submit applications to Riverside. But when I stood up from the couch, the headache that had been lurking all day suddenly intensified. The room tilted slightly. "Just tired," I told myself. "It's been a long week." I went to bed early, but I couldn't get comfortable. The headache was getting worse, not better. By midnight, it felt like someone was driving a spike through my skull. I reached for my phone to call for help, but my right hand wouldn't cooperate. It felt heavy, numb. When I tried to sit up, my right leg wouldn't move properly either. Panic seized me. I knew what this was. Arthur's mother had died of a stroke. I knew the signs. With my left hand, I managed to grab my phone and dial 911. The words came out slurred wrong, but the operator understood enough. "Ma'am, I'm sending an ambulance to your location. Can you get to the door?" I couldn't answer. The phone slipped from my hand as darkness crept in from the edges of my vision. My last conscious thought was, not now. Not when I just started living again. I woke up to bright lights and the beeping of machines. My mouth was dry and my head felt stuffed with cotton. I tried to move my right arm and felt only a weak twinge. "Mrs. Warren, can you hear me?" A nurse's face appeared above me. "You're in the hospital. You've had a stroke. Try not to move too much." A stroke. The word settled over me like a heavy blanket. I wanted to ask questions, but my mouth wouldn't form the words properly. "Your son is here," the nurse said gently. "He's been here all night. Would you like to see him?" I managed a small nod. Julian appeared looking absolutely terrible, unshaven, red-eyed, his shirt wrinkled like he'd slept in it. When he saw I was awake, his face crumpled. "Mom! Oh, thank God, I thought—" He couldn't finish. I tried to speak, but only garbled sounds came out. "Don't try to talk yet," Julian said, pulling a chair close to the bed. "The doctor said you'll need speech therapy, but you should recover most of your function. It was a mild stroke. Mild. You're going to be okay." Mild. The word was reassuring and terrifying at once. Mild meant I would recover. Mild also meant this had really happened. "The building super found you when he came to deliver a package." Julian continued his words, tumbling over each other. "You'd called 911 and they broke down the door. You've been unconscious for almost 24 hours. 24 hours. I'd lost a whole day. Over the next few hours, doctors came and went. They explained that I'd had an ischemic stroke, a blood clot that had temporarily blocked blood flow to part of my brain. The right side of my body was weak, but with physical therapy I should recover most of the function. My speech would improve with therapy. I was lucky, they said. It could have been much worse. Lucky. I didn't feel lucky. Helen arrived that afternoon with flowers and fierce determination in her eyes. "Don't you dare give up on me now, Eleanor Warren. We have apartments to buy and lives to live." Pat from the calligraphy class came bringing a card signed by everyone in the class. "James says you're excused from homework until you can hold a brush again, but he expects you back as soon as you're able." Even Clara came looking pale and scared. "Mrs. Warren, I'm so sorry. Is there anything you need?" "Anything at all?" I couldn't answer any of them with words, but I could squeeze their hands with my left hand, and I tried to smile, even though my face didn't quite cooperate. The worst moment came 3 days into my hospital stay. Julian was sitting beside my bed reading the newspaper aloud to keep me company when suddenly he started crying. "I almost lost you, Mom. And the last real conversation we had, we were fighting about money and houses and stupid, meaningless things." He put his head down on the edge of my bed. "I'm so sorry. For all of it. For taking you for granted. For letting Clara push you aside. For forging your signature. For everything." I managed to lift my left hand and place it on his head the way I used to when he was small and needed comfort. "Don't give up on me." I managed to say the words slow and slurred, but understandable. He looked up, tears streaming down his face. "Never. I'll never give up on you, Mom. And I'll do better. I swear I'll do better." The hospital released me after 10 days with a stack of prescriptions and a schedule for outpatient physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy. Julian wanted me to come back to his house to recover, but I refused. "Old house," I managed to say. "My space." "Mom, you can't take care of yourself yet. What if something happens?" Helen stepped in. "I'll stay with her. My house is just 15 minutes away. I can be there in minutes if she needs anything." "I could hire a home health aide," Julian offered. "No." The word came out clearer this time. I was getting better at speaking each day. "Helen. Just Helen." So Helen moved into the old apartment with me, setting up camp in what used to be Julian's childhood bedroom. She drove me to therapy appointments, helped me with exercises at home, and cooked meals that were supposed to be good for stroke recovery, lots of vegetables, lean proteins, whole grains. The physical therapy was hard. My right leg was weak, and I had to use a walker at first. Simple tasks like brushing my teeth or buttoning a shirt became frustrating challenges. More than once, I broke down crying in frustration. "I was just getting started," I sobbed to Helen one particularly bad day. "I finally found myself, and now this. This is temporary," Helen said firmly. "The Eleanor I know doesn't give up. You're going to recover, and you're going to move into that apartment at Riverside, and you're going to live your life. What if I can't? Then we'll figure something else out. But Eleanor, you called 911 yourself. You saved your own life. If you're strong enough to do that, you're strong enough to recover." She was right. I'd saved myself. Not Julian, not Clara, not anyone else. Me. That thought became my motivation. Every painful step in physical therapy, every frustrating speech exercise, every occupational therapy session where I practiced simple tasks like pouring water or folding towels, I did it all with the image of that one-bedroom apartment in my mind. My home, my space, my life. 6 weeks after the stroke, I walked into the physical therapy center without my walker. I still needed a cane and I was slow, but I walked. "Look at you," my therapist Maria said with a huge smile. "That's amazing progress, Mrs. Warren." "When can I hold a brush?" I asked. My speech was much better, though I still had to think about each word. "A calligraphy brush. Let's try now." She had me sit at a table and handed me a pen first, then a marker, then finally a thin paintbrush. My right hand was still weak, but when I dipped the brush in water and made a stroke on the paper, my hand remembered. Not perfect, not like before, but it worked. I started crying right there in the therapy center. "Happy tears," Maria asked gently. "Happy tears," I confirmed. That evening I called James from the community center. My speech was good enough now for phone calls, though I still got tired if I talked too long. "Eleanor, we've been missing you. How are you feeling?" "Better, much better. James, can I come back to class?" "Of course, whenever you're ready. We've saved your seat." "Next Tuesday." "We'll be waiting for you." The demolition check came through 8 weeks after the stroke. David handled everything just as he'd promised, making sure the money was properly divided and deposited. I stared at my bank statement, seeing numbers I'd never seen before. $114,000. Even after setting aside the trust fund for Leo, I had more than enough to buy the apartment at Riverside and furnish it comfortably. You could invest some of it, David suggested when I met with him to finalize everything. Set yourself up with some monthly income. I'd like that. Can you recommend someone? He connected me with a financial advisor, a woman named Sophia, who specialized in retirement planning. She set up a diversified portfolio that would give me a modest monthly income while preserving the principal. You're in good shape, Mrs. Warren, Sophia said at our meeting. With your pension, Social Security, and this investment income, you'll be comfortable. Not wealthy, but secure. Secure. After a lifetime of worrying about money, of stretching every dollar, I was finally secure. The apartment at Riverside was still available. I put down the deposit the same day. Julian helped me move in, him and Clara, and even little Leo, who was excited about Grandma's new house. They carried boxes and assembled furniture while I directed from a chair, still not quite steady enough to be much help. The one-bedroom apartment wasn't large, but it was mine. I'd chosen every piece of furniture, every curtain, every dish in the kitchen. The balcony overlooked the garden, and I could already imagine sitting out there in the mornings with my tea. It's perfect, Mom, Julian said, looking around. Really perfect. Clara was arranging flowers on my small dining table. Mrs. Warren, I hope you'll let us visit often. Leo's already planning his first sleepover here. Visit any time, I said, smiling at Leo, who was examining everything with wide eyes. That night after they left, I sat on my balcony and watched the sun set over the garden. Helen came out to join me, carrying 2 glasses of wine. To Eleanor Warren, she said, raising her glass, who refused to be invisible. 2 second chances, I replied, clinking my glass against hers. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn pink and orange. Below, residents were gathering in the courtyard for an evening social. I could hear laughter and conversation drifting up. Tomorrow I would join them. Tomorrow I would start my calligraphy class. Tomorrow I would begin this new chapter. But tonight I just sat with my oldest friend and felt grateful. Grateful to be alive. Grateful to be independent. Grateful to be Eleanor again. 6 months later, I stood in the community center teaching a calligraphy class of my own. Remember, I told my students, demonstrating a stroke with my right hand fully recovered, now strong and steady. Calligraphy is meditation. Each stroke is a breath. Each character is a moment of peace. The class was part of Riverside's programming, but it was open to the public too. I had 12 students ranging from 50 to 85 years old, all of them eager to learn. After class, Pat, who'd become one of my closest friends, came up with a huge grin. Eleanor, you're a natural teacher. Have you thought about expanding, maybe offering private lessons? Maybe, I said, smiling. Right now I'm just enjoying this. And I was. Teaching calligraphy, attending book club, working in the community garden, having coffee with neighbors every Wednesday morning. This was the life I'd built for myself, and it was full in ways I'd never expected. Julian and Clara came for dinner every Sunday now. Clara had even started attending my calligraphy class, saying she needed something that was just for her, separate from being a mother and wife. How do you do it? She'd asked me last week. How do you find yourself after being defined by your family for so long? 1 stroke at a time, I'd told her. Like calligraphy. You just practice until your hand remembers who you are. Leo loved visiting. The community had become his extended family. Tom let him help in the woodworking shop, Susan read him stories in the library, and everyone spoiled him with cookies and attention. Grandma, he said during their last visit, I like your house better than ours. Why's that, sweetheart? Because you're happy here. Your smile is different. Out of the mouths of babes, as Arthur used to say. Clara's pregnancy was progressing well. She was 7 months along now, and this time she'd asked if I wanted to be in the delivery room. Not as a servant, but as a grandmother. As family. I'd said yes. On a Tuesday in October, almost 9 months after that terrible Friday night dinner, I had a special guest in my calligraphy class, Julian. He sat at the back, awkward and uncertain with the unfamiliar brush in his hand. I showed him the basic strokes, guiding his hand the way I'd done when he was 5 and learning to write his name. This is harder than it looks, he muttered, staring at his wobbly lines. Everything worthwhile is hard at first, I said. You just have to practice. After class, he helped me clean up washing brushes and putting away supplies. Mom, I want to show you something. He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo. We put an offer on this house. 3 bedrooms, nice yard, good school district. It's in our budget and we love it. The house in the photo was lovely, smaller than the Willow Creek mansions, but charming and well-maintained. It's perfect, I said honestly. There's something else. He scrolled to another photo. This is the spare bedroom. We were thinking, maybe we could set it up as an art studio. For you and Clara. You could keep supplies here, work on projects when you visit. It would be yours, not a guest room, not a storage room. A space that's just for creativity. My throat tightened with emotion. Julian, I know it doesn't fix everything, he said quickly. I know I hurt you, and I'll probably spend the rest of my life making up for it. But I want you to know you're not just welcome in our lives, Mom. You're essential. Not because we need a babysitter or a cook. Because you're you. Because you're my mother. Because Leo and his little sister or brother should grow up knowing how amazing their grandmother is. I pulled him into a hug, this man-child of mine who'd gotten lost but was finding his way back. I love you, I whispered. Even when I'm angry with you, I love you. I love you too, Mom, and I'm sorry. For all of it. I know, and I forgive you. But Julian, if you ever forge my signature again, I will press charges. He pulled back, startled, then saw the hint of a smile on my face. Understood, he said seriously. No more forgery. Ever. That evening I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea and my journal, something Sophia, my financial advisor, had suggested as a way to process everything that had happened. I turned to a fresh page and began to write. 9 months ago I was invisible. I was Eleanor the mother, Eleanor the grandmother, Eleanor the housekeeper. I had no identity outside of what I could do for other people. Then my daughter-in-law sent me a text about eating leftovers and everything changed. I discovered my son was planning to steal from me. I discovered I'd been erased from family celebrations. I discovered they were planning to hide me in a basement room. And I discovered something else. I still had fight left in me. I had a stroke. I thought it was the end of everything, the end of my independence, the end of my second chance. But it wasn't. It was just another challenge to overcome. Now I'm here in my own apartment, teaching calligraphy, making friends, living a life that's entirely my own. Julian and I are rebuilding our relationship slowly, carefully, but genuinely. Clara is trying to find herself the way I found myself. Leo visits every week and calls this place his favorite house. I'm 69 years old, and for the first time in decades, I know exactly who I am. I'm not just Julian's mother, or Leo's grandmother, or Arthur's widow. I'm Eleanor Warren, artist, teacher, friend, survivor, and I'm finally truly happy. I closed the journal and looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere I like to think Arthur was looking down proud of the woman I'd become after he left. A woman who'd learned to stand up for herself. A woman who'd learned that it was never too late to start over. A woman who'd learned that the most important person to take care of was herself because you couldn't pour from an empty cup. My phone buzzed with a text from Julian. Clara's having contractions. False alarm probably, but wanted to keep you posted. Love you, Mom. I smiled and texted back. Keep me posted. I'll be ready when it's time. Love you too. Another text came in, this one from Pat. Wine and cards. Tomorrow night, Susan's place. I'll be there, I typed back. This was my life now, full of family and friends of art and learning of peace and purpose. Not the life I'd planned when I married Arthur 48 years ago. Not the life I'd expected when I moved in with Julian 3 years ago. But it was mine. And it was enough. No, it was more than enough. It was everything. 1 year later, I stood in Julian and Clara's new house, holding my 3-month-old granddaughter, Sophie. The house was lovely, not a mansion, but a home. The kitchen was bright and spacious. The art studio Julian had promised was off the living room, filled with calligraphy supplies, and Clara's new hobby, watercolor painting. We were celebrating Thanksgiving, and for once everyone was there. Julian and Clara Leo, and baby Sophie Amanda, and Mark Helen and her nephew David, even Pat from my calligraphy class who'd become so close she was practically family. The table was crowded and loud, filled with laughter and good food. I'd made my famous apple pie. Clara had made turkey. Julian had attempted stuffing with mixed results. But it was all perfect because we were together. Mom, Julian said, standing up with his wine glass, I want to make a toast. The table quieted. 1 year ago, I was the worst son in the world. I took my mother for granted. I tried to steal from her. I treated her like she was invisible. His voice shook. But Mom didn't let me get away with it. She stood up for herself. She demanded better. And in doing so, she taught me the most important lesson of my life, that love without respect is worthless. Clara squeezed his hand, tears in her eyes. So here's to Mom, to Eleanor Warren, the strongest woman I know. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for teaching me what it means to really see someone. Thank you for being the grandmother Leo and Sophie need, the mother I need. And most importantly, thank you for being yourself. To Eleanor, everyone chorused, raising their glasses. I felt tears prick my eyes, but they were happy tears. I looked around the table at all these people I loved, all these people who saw me, really saw me, and I felt a contentment I'd never experienced before. After dinner, as we were cleaning up, Leo tugged on my sleeve. Grandma, can I show you something? He led me to his room and pointed proudly to the wall where Julian had hung a series of small frames. Each frame held one of Leo's drawings, including the very first one he'd ever shown me, the crooked dinosaur from 3 years ago. Daddy says you kept all my pictures, Leo said, even when you moved away. Of course I did. They're precious to me. I'm keeping all your calligraphy pictures, too, he said seriously. When I'm big like Daddy, I want to remember that Grandma was an artist. I knelt down my knees, still protesting sometimes, but working, and hugged him tight. You know what the best part is, Leo? What, Mom? I get to watch you grow up. I get to be here for all of it. Not because I have to be, but because I choose to be. I'm glad you choose us, Grandma. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. That night, as Helen drove me back to Riverside, I thought about that text message that had changed everything. Mom, don't forget to eat the leftovers in the fridge. At the time, it had felt like the ultimate dismissal. You're not important enough to celebrate with. Just eat the scraps we leave behind. But in a strange way, that text message had been the best thing that ever happened to me. It had been the wake-up call I needed, the push that forced me to finally stand up and say I deserved better than leftovers. I deserved a full plate, a seat at the table, a voice that was heard and respected. And now I had all of that. What are you smiling about? Helen asked, glancing over at me. Just thinking about leftovers, I said. Still, Eleanor, you need to let that go. I have let it go. I looked out the window at the passing lights. I was just thinking I'm done with leftovers. From now on, I'm only eating the good stuff. Helen laughed. Amen to that. When I got back to my apartment, I made myself a cup of tea and sat on my balcony. The November air was chilly, but I'd bundled up in Arthur's old cardigan, the one I'd kept all these years because it still smelled faintly like him. My phone buzzed with a photo from Julian. It showed Leo and Sophie on the couch, Leo holding his baby sister carefully while she slept. The caption read, "Thank you for today, Mom, for everything. We love you." I sent back a heart emoji. I'd finally learned how to use those and set the phone aside. Tomorrow I had a calligraphy class to teach. Tomorrow night, book club. This weekend, Clara and I were taking a watercolor workshop together. Next month, Helen and I were planning a trip to visit art museums in Philadelphia. My calendar was full. My life was full. And I, Eleanor Warren, 69 years old, stroke survivor, mother, grandmother, artist, teacher, friend, I was finally completely joyfully myself. The leftovers were finished. Now every day was a feast.